Fairmont, Banff Springs. A National Historic Site of Canada, the Fairmont Banff Springs has been a shining example of Canadian hospitality from its inception. William Cornelius Van Horn, the general manager of the Canadian Pacific Railway, first considered constructing a grand hotel in the Canadian Rockies when several employees of his railroad stumbled across several mineral springs in 1883. Noticing a great opportunity to facilitate travel along the Canadian Pacific Railway, Van Horn immediately set about constructing a brilliant grand dame that would be one of the world's most luxurious. As such, he commissioned blueprints for an impressive hotel that would be situated at the convergence of the Bow and Spray rivers. Architect Bruce Price led the design team, who relied upon Châteauesque-style architecture as the source of his inspiration. Construction commenced in 1886 and concluded some 2 years later. As soon as it debuted as the Banff Springs Hotel in 1886, it rapidly became one of the top 3 mountain resorts in North America. From 1900 to the 1920s, several adjustments were made in order to update the hotel and its offerings to keep its long-standing status. Among the first construction projects undertaken around that time was the development of the hotel's iconic 11-story tower. Designed by architect Walter Painter, it possessed an amazing array of woodwork and limestone native to Alberta. Yet, much of this work was significantly compromised when an accident afflicted the entire hotel in 1926. Fortunately, an engineer of the Canadian Pacific Railway, John W. Orrock, restored the hotel back to its former glory. He managed to unify the appearance of the Banff Springs Hotel, giving it the current facade that is present today. The hotel continued to endure through the Great Depression, and its stature never diminished. It continued to host countless luminaries from throughout the world, as well, including King George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, during their royal tour of Canada in 1939. The Banff Springs Hotel briefly shut down in 1942 as a result of the scarcity in labor wrought by World War II. It would not reopen until the war ended in 1945. Though it took most of the 1950s and 1960s to reclaim its former status as one of the greatest resort getaways in the North Americas, the war had not completely ruined the hotel's charm. Adapting it to the new economics of the era, several changes to the hotel provided it with new life. A pivotal point came in the 1970s when the Banff Springs Hotel began to stay open year-round. As such, it offered guests a bevy of new winter activities. More renovations and expansions were done a decade later, providing guests with the most cutting-edge accommodations and amenities of the time. In the 1990s, Ted Kissane became the manager of the Banff Springs Hotel. He subsequently restored the majestic hotel, giving it the nickname the Castle in the Rockies. Another series of expansions followed shortly thereafter, which saw the addition of a new spectacular facility called the Banff Springs Conference Center. In 2011, Canadian Pacific Limited, the parent company to Canadian Pacific Hotels, merged the brand with Fairmont Hotels and Resorts following a massive corporate reorganization. That fusion resulted in the Banff Springs Hotel getting renamed as the Fairmont Banff Springs. With over 100 years in hospitality, the Fairmont Banff Springs staff are still trained in exceptional service and excellence. The rebirth of the hotel time and again has provided guests with an incomparable access to the beauty of the Canadian Rockies. A proud member of historic hotels worldwide, the Fairmont Banff Springs continues to be among the best historic destinations in all of Canada. Ghost stories. Since its grand debut over a century ago, guests and staff alike allege that many unique spirits haunt the Fairmont Banff Springs. One such ghost is Sam Mccauley, an elderly Scotsman who served as the hotel's lead bellhop throughout the mid-20th century. Those who come across Sam indicate that he is incredibly helpful and kind, with some even stating that his spirit had actually assisted them. One famous tale involved 2 women who called upon the front desk for service after their guestroom key would not work. When the regular bellhop did not respond for 15 minutes, the 2 women walked back to their guestroom defeated. But then another hotel employee matching Sam's description approached their door, who proceeded to unlock it. The bellhops staffing the front desk that night were stunned to learn that such a figure had manifested to help the 2 women. Other stories involve guests seeing Sam haunt his old office on the mezzanine floor, which is currently a guest room. A few have even watched his ghostly facade materialized at various sports on the 6th, 7th, and 9th floors of the hotel. Perhaps the most famous of those specters is known as the Bride, whose stories harken all the way back to the 1920s. According to the legends, a young couple once decided to get married at the Fairmont Banff Springs around the time of its initial opening. The bride looked beautiful as she descended down the hotel's staircase that day, adorned in a gorgeous white wedding dress. Unfortunately, something unusual startled her greatly, and she stumbled down toward the floor below. Some stories state that her heel caught the banister, while others insist that a candle nearby glanced off her clothing. Nevertheless, she perished during her fall. Countless people have since reported encountering a veiled figure gliding across the stairwell, her shadow billowing as if it were an ornate gown. Some have even seen an apparition in the ballroom upstairs, who would dance throughout the space in a massive wedding dress. Many believe that it is the bride who is still desperately waiting to dance with her beloved for the first time.